Thank you, President Jeff. I believe today marks the 14th consecutive January that Mayor Tom Henry has addressed our club since he took office in 2008. The only other speaker that I can even imagine who may have spoken to us more frequently would be Dr. Wendy Robinson, who became superintendent in 2003. So Mayor Henry, you still have a few more opportunities to break her record if she owns it. So if you'll remember, a year ago on January 20th, 2020 BC, before COVID, Mayor Henry gave our club a summary of city accomplishments and a preview of what he hoped his fourth term in office would achieve. He noted that Promenade Park, the Bottle Works apartment complex, the downtown Hampton Inn and Suites, and the Landing had ribbon cuttings in 2019. He looked forward to completing a traffic roundabout at Goshen Road's Five Points intersection, a new entrance to Franke Park off Goshen Road, and an improved Ardmore corridor linking the city and Fort Wayne International Airport. Looking ahead, the mayor anticipated development to the east and west of Promenade Park and a reveal of a public art master plan called Art for All. He also told us of his bold plan to go beyond what one might think of as being within the scope of work for a mayor to focus on 4 areas of public health. Well, he was certainly right about one thing. Much of his focus would be on public health, but not so much on fighting smoking, obesity, the drug problem, and infant mortality. 2 months after speaking to us, COVID-19 virus hit Allen County. We all had to adjust. Here to tell us what the city has accomplished amid a pandemic, how the city has adapted, and what lies ahead is the mayor of the great city of Fort Wayne, Tom Henry. I think you're on mute, Mayor Henry.
There we go. Thank you so much. It really, once again, is a pleasure to be before all of you. Certainly, the technique is a little bit different this year, but nevertheless, I enjoy taking a few minutes to speak to, in many cases, my fellow Rotarians. As many of you know, I was fortunate to be in Rotary for a number of years, and unfortunately, my schedule made it so that I could not attend the amount of meetings that I wanted to. But nevertheless, you're all still in my hearts as far as what you do for our community and what Rotary does internationally as well. So thanks again for giving me a few minutes. What I thought I would do today is spend just a few minutes in 3 different areas. The first area, John touched on a little bit, and that is what happened to us in 2020, what happened to the entire world, which certainly changed the working conditions of everyone who this pandemic touched. In Fort Wayne, unfortunately, for quite a period of time, we were hit rather hard. From about February on, we could not get our arms around it. There were a number of different spikes going on. There was so much misunderstanding of what COVID brought with it, how to use masks, how not to use masks. So it was a tremendous learning process for all of us. In the meantime, we had people get extremely sick in our community, and unfortunately, in many cases, we lost citizens. It's getting better, but much of 2020, we were consumed with that entire process of trying to, again, get our head around what was going on in our community, what was going on in our state, our country, and the world. During that same period of time, we experienced a lot of social unrest. In May of last year, our city experienced something that we had never experienced before. And that was an outpouring of anger and frustration and depression that took over not only activities in downtown as far as people demonstrating in a number of different ways, but it pushed on to physical damage of property as well. again, something that our community had never experienced to that extent before. And it was something that, again, we had to respond to as quickly as possible and try to make sure that our city and the citizens were protected. And then on top of that, we had a very unusual election period. We had two individuals running for office, a current president who had his own way of dealing with many of the problems that our country was facing. And we had a new former vice president who, again, had his interpretation of how things should be run. And they were battling throughout the entire year. So our city was in a position where we were getting hit from all sides with a number of challenges that we had never experienced before. On top of that, we were trying to move forward a lot of the goals and objectives that John talked about, and we had identified as a team that my cabinet had put together as projects and programs and initiatives that we did have the financial wherewithal and the personnel to accomplish those. So there was a tremendous amount of activity taking place in 2020. As far as the social unrest component, we immediately put together a commission made up of about 24 individuals that immediately began working on the whys and the wheres of how this thing happened, and how could we not only lower the temperature in our community, but how could we make sure that something like this never happened again? And what was the root cause of all of this? And how could we go about as a community embracing the tension and turning it into something more positive? We also employed the Board of Health to step in, and the county commissioners and the state of Indiana to work as a team on the coronavirus situation, and how could we continue to educate the public as far as those measures that needed to be taken to lessen the impact on as many of our citizens as possible while we were working on a vaccine. So we had a lot of meetings behind the scenes trying to make sure that employers and retail operations and restaurants and bars and others would also participate in this to protect our citizens. Now, we did best we could as far as observing what was going on nationally. And what we tried to do more than anything was to make sure that we could separate as much fact from fiction as we could without getting ourselves too involved in the debate between those two gentlemen. But at the same time, we had to make sure that the news that was being presented to all of us was as objective as possible. And that's a lot more difficult than a lot of people realize. So we were very much involved in those 3 or 4 challenges. But again, at the same time, I told my staff that we could not just sit back on our laurels and not do anything else to make sure that our city was in the best possible position it could be in. So we broke our operations down into 6 different areas. The first being public safety. Was our fire department and police department prepared? Were they in a position as far as manpower and equipment to make sure that they could not only do the duties that they were used to doing, but with these new challenges before our community, did we have the resources to make sure that we could continue to be the best city that we could be? So the chiefs had a tremendous amount of responsibility, and quite frankly, I think they handled it in a truly admirable fashion. We also took a look at our infrastructure, where the streets and the curbs and the sidewalks that so many of our citizens depend on. Did we have a plan in place? We invested the previous year $28 million, which was an unheard of amount of money for a city our size. Not only did we do it in 2019, but we budgeted to do it for 2020, and we did it again. Our street department never let up. Our public works department never gave in to a lot of the pressure that they were given to back off and put their money elsewhere. Again, infrastructure was just too important to them. Our parks department, which was probably in the forefront as far as offering quality of life measures and initiatives for our citizens. Again, in 2019, we invested $3 million, and Steve and the staff did it again in 2020. They never let up on making sure that the recreational and family initiatives that we had put together, that they did not wane in their presentation. We in city utilities, one of the biggest projects ever in the history of Fort Wayne, the Deep Rock Tunnel, that continued to operate unbeknownst to a lot of it because it's 200 feet underground. But what is to be a 5-mile long tunnel to capture a lot of the wastewater and be able to take care of it before we put it in the rivers, we're already about 2.5, 3 miles along. That has been chugging along 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, again, unbeknownst to a lot of us, but something that's going to be, again, make a significant statement for our community. The downtown, you know, where I thought we might have to slow down in some of the programs that we historically have been able to accomplish in downtown. I did not know if we were going to be able to gather the resources necessary to make sure that our downtown continued to have the momentum. But again, it never stopped. And probably the primary focus was electric works. That, as many of you know, was a very contentious initiative for quite some time because of the complexity and the number of moving parts. So for 4 or 5 years, this had been worked on and changed and manipulated and monitored, trying to make sure that all the pieces were in place. Well, finally, it came to be in 2020. Paperwork was signed, money was put in place, and as I speak, construction is being started on a massive project. It's, as most of you know, it's broken into 2 sections, one on the east side, one on the west side. We've started on the west side. It's about a $280 million project on the west side, and we've been able to put together sufficient funds to be able to again put that together, with the anchor development being a Do It Best. In about 2 years, it's my understanding, in about 2 years of what everything will be ready for them to move in, for Fort Wayne Community Schools, for Sweetwater, Parkview, and a number of others who have signed MOUs and are now in the process of signing full lease agreements, so that we'll have an additional offering, a massive offering right outside of downtown Fort Wayne. But at the same time, we broke ground on the new Ashbury project, which, if you drive by the project now, which is right next door to the old Metro building, they are going to be building a mixed-use development there with a parking garage, retail space, and the home office for a banking institution here in town. And the parking garage, which will make it unique, is not only will it serve that building and the Metro building for those who purchased the condominiums on top, but it's also going to be providing parking for the new hotel, which will be opening in April right across the street. The Bradley is just about finished. I talked to Barbara from time to time, and she's very excited about this very unique offering of a boutique hotel in downtown Fort Wayne. And if you continue to head a little bit north, you'll come to Promenade Park. And in February or March, we'll be breaking ground on the Promenade at Riverfront. That's the Barrett Stokely project. That's about an $80 million mixed-use development, again, of retail, retail, apartments and office space. But that'll go up and down the river. And again, that'll take about 2 or 3 years to build. It's massive in size, but it blends in very well with Promenade Park. And then if you move east of there, you'll get to the parking lot of Club Soda. And this summer, we'll be breaking ground there for the second Barrett Stokely project. Again, about an $80 million development. That will be mixed use as well, but what will be unique about that particular development is there will be townhomes up and down Clinton Street from the Pavilion all the way to Superior Street, and on the other side up and down Bar Street. So all of those were continuing to be worked on as well. And as was mentioned earlier by John, a couple of developments that were finished in 2020, the widening and taking out of the curve on State Street between Wells and Northside High School, the completion of the roundabout at Goshen and Goshen and Sherman, and the finishing up of Ardmore Avenue to increase the safety and appearance of going from the expressway into our airport. So all of those things took place in 2020 during a pandemic, during a time where our society was being challenged with a number of social issues, during a time where our economy went up and down, during a time when we had a lot of political unrest. Our city never deviated from the fact that we had established some time ago that we were going to be in the forefront of our state as far as making sure that our city was moving forward. And again, we never deviated from that. And what a statement for our city to make. But we're not done yet. We're going to continue. It's right now we're developing for 2021 a Southeast strategy. The Southeast quadrant of our city has been suffering for quite some time because we've never been able to identify truly what was possible Southeast. Well, we finally put together a committee. In fact, some of you may be on that committee. And we've developed some areas where we feel have some real potential. And we're going to be rolling those out in 2021. I know Sharon Tucker, the city councilwoman for the area, she's been at the forefront. She's helped us out immensely, but we have been able to identify certain areas, and we'll begin to move those along. We also have our airport itself. I talked about widening Ardmore to get to the airport. Now we're going to spend millions of dollars redoing our airport. I mean, let's face it, we call ourselves Fort Wayne International Airport, so let's look like one. So we're going to add in more loading spaces. We're going to our terminals. We're going to increase the baggage area. We're really going to make it something that we all can be proud of. We're going to be continuing to develop our urban trail downtown. It'll go from the Grand Wayne Center down Harrison Street to Superior. It'll turn east and then head south on Bar Street, a much wider sidewalk area. The whole idea is to invite people to come downtown. And I think we're also going to be breaking ground in 2021 on the engineering to replace the bridge on Superior, on Spy Run, right next to Hall's Gas House. We have the Spy Run Bridge, which has paid us price as far as timing. So we're going to be taking off the top of that, redoing it, and we're going to be renaming the bridge the Fort Wayne Veterans Memorial Bridge. That resolution is in front of the legislature now. Representative Giacquina is carrying the bill, and we'll be building a brand new bridge for all of us to not only enjoy, but to give our veterans a recognition of the work that they've done. So you can see that even though many of us worked out of our homes for a number of periods, in fact, today we just opened up Citizen Square again after being closed for 7 or 8 weeks. We did not rest. My staff, all 2,000 of them, realized that we still had an obligation to keep our city moving, and I couldn't be more proud of them. So with that, I'd be glad to take any questions.
Well, Mr. Mayor, you're serving in your 4th term.
Yes.
And this one certainly has a different flavor than the prior 3. Yeah, I know you're only shortly into this term, but would you say that this has the workings to be the most difficult term that you faced because of all the issues?
Unquestionably, we've got some challenges that none of us have ever had to face before. We talked about the pandemic, and I know this is not what you want to hear, what any of you want to hear, but this isn't over yet. Just because we have a couple of vaccines that have been approved and are now being distributed as quickly as possible, we're far, far away from being able to take our masks off and worry about social distancing. Since we're Zooming and you can't throw anything at me, I can tell you that I do not expect us to be anywhere in a position to say that COVID is in the rearview mirror until probably this time next year. Let me explain why I say that. President Biden has a very aggressive schedule for vaccine distribution. He would like to do 1 million a day for the next 100 days, and what an initiative. But even if he did that, we have 330 million people in this country. So you still have another 230 million people sitting out there that need to be vaccinated. Now that's just the first vaccination. You've got to wait 2 or 3 weeks for your second vaccination. So my friends, this is going to take a while. And right now we're having meetings on, quite frankly, on our festivals for this summer. Do we have to delay German Fest again, and the Three Rivers Festival, and all of these other great summer offerings, excuse me, that make our city famous for what it has to offer in the summer? Are we going to be in a position to offer those again? If so, it would be on a very, very limited basis, and I'm not sure how we could. So that is still first and foremost in my goals and objectives for this year, is to keep that process moving along, keeping all of you safe as we begin to get vaccinated and move on. So yeah, it's going to be an extremely challenging year. Also, access to capital. A lot of our small businesses, unfortunately, closed. They were hoping that would be temporary. Unfortunately, it's probably permanent in many cases. So we're going to have a downturn on some of the hospitality offerings, some of the entertainment offerings in our community. It's going to take a while for them to get replaced, and where is the money to replace it? Yeah, we've got some real challenges that historically we've never had to face before. So it's going to be a tough year.
Do we have other Rotarians with questions?
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Mayor. First of all, thank you very much for coming. I was just wondering how your view of the social justice situation changed, was expanded, or in some way after the social justice upheavals that happened here last summer. What changed for you and your outlook in yourself, as well as your outlook on the city?
Well, there were two things that became evident right away to me. One was the day after the disastrous situation in our community, which happened on a Friday night. And for those of you that witnessed it, it was an horrific situation in our community, to have people really put in harm's way, and not just those who happen to be in the area, but our own police officers and people in vehicles. I mean, it was really, really a stressful situation for a few hours. Well, we got through that, but the next morning I came down here early in the morning with several of my staff members, and we began walking the sidewalks of downtown where windows had been busted out and graffiti had been written, ugly graffiti on the walls and benches turned over. And as we were walking through, citizens, our citizens, your neighbors and mine, all of a sudden came out of nowhere. I mean, they just started walking out of alleys, getting out of their cars, and they started picking up the glass. And they started uprighting the benches, and they started scrubbing off the graffiti. These citizens didn't work for anybody. They didn't work for me. They didn't work for you. And one lady said it all. She looked at me as she was picking up glass, and she said, "Mayor, this is not Fort Wayne." And I'll never forget that, because I think everyone downtown that was working in that environment would have said the same thing. This is not our city. We don't do this. We're better than this. And I think that's the first lesson that I learned, was we have a tremendous citizen base that recognizes that we're kind of special. But the second thing that I recognized was, obviously there's a concern here, and it was more than just being upset because of what happened to George Floyd. It was deeper than that. And that's why I put together the Commission on Social Justice and Police Reform, because those were the two areas that I thought probably were at the foundation of a lot of the concern. And Michelle Chambers, City Councilwoman Michelle Chambers, and then Joe Jordan, the two of them co-chaired the commission, and they were meeting not once a month. They were meeting every other week. Every other Monday they met, which is a tremendous ask for busy people, but by God, they met. And I went to some of the meetings and they worked. And they went out to the police academy to view some of the training that was taking place. And they would bring individuals in and talk about the needs and the wants as it pertained to those areas. Now they've come back with some recommendations, which they're going to be giving me almost as we speak. I think within the next week or two, they have a number of recommendations which we'll go through and determine whether or not we already offer it, but maybe it needs to be tweaked. Or we don't offer it yet, how can we make it a part of the Safety Academy's curriculum? Or maybe we just don't have the ability to do it now. And a good example of that is they wanted police cameras, body cams. Well, we only had a few. Well, they want more. So we went to City Council on their recommendation. We've asked for funding for 100 more cameras. Now we need about 400, but they're very expensive. So we said, okay, let's set it up where we will get 100 or 100 and some every year for the next 3 years. But that was one of their recommendations, and that's what we're doing. So those are the two things that I picked up, that our city is an unbelievable city as far as its pride in what we have to offer. And we have the ability to address some of the social needs and wants and desires. So there was quite a learning experience as well.
Great question, great answers. Other Rotarians with questions? Jim, or Dick.
Got to unmute.
Thank you.
Mayor Tom, this last weekend, supposedly the city mayors nationally were meeting. What did you bring back from that meeting in terms of the issues that they're facing and how they compare to what we're doing, and lessons that they can share with us and what's happening in our city?
Well, most of our meeting actually was spent on public safety and how to go about addressing some of the challenges that we just talked about. You know, again, we were very blessed to have experienced only really 2 days of true upheaval. That first day, which was devastating, and even the second day, when we did have a rather large mass of individuals, And we were prepared, a little bit better prepared for them with police officers and others. No damage to property happened that second night. We had to go around and keep people moving, but there was no physical damage to automobiles or to businesses. And as I talked to my colleagues, and as I was working with the US Conference of Mayors, that was almost unheard of. Everybody had day after day after day of social upheaval. And in fact, even if you go to our capital, Indianapolis, you'll still see windows downtown boarded up. And it's been 6-7 months. Yeah, there's still a lot of tension. Topeka's another one. Seattle's another one. They were all on the call. And we were, again, police officers primarily were sharing how they were trying to handle their current environment. Then we went beyond that, and this is something that we've had to institute today. And unfortunately, we talked about how do we keep the decision makers, the elected officials in our city safe, because of what happened at our Capitol when they were when demonstrators, and I hate to call them demonstrators because that's almost too good of a word. They were brutes. They were illegal thugs, and going into our Capitol and threatening to hang our vice president, threatening to assassinate our Speaker of the House. That went way beyond a demonstration. But because of things like that, and the possibility that there's still a lot of anger out there, measures are being taken now to protect elected officials throughout our country. And Fort Wayne is no different. So effective today, for instance, for those of you that come to Citizen Square, you would not be able to come up to the 4th floor unless you have a specific appointment and are keyed up by security. It's difficult. That was a difficult decision to make because I hope all of you know that the county commissioners and I have always tried to be very transparent. I have an open door policy as best I can. I want people to come in and sit down and talk. But unfortunately, the period that we're in now is putting us in the position that we have to step back. But yeah, a lot of the conversation, Dick, that was taken was on response to social action or social unrest in our community, and then also protection of our elected officials.
Wayne, I see that you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question for the mayor?
No, I didn't. I didn't know I knew it. No.
Oh, okay. Barb, you had another question?
Yeah, so, as you were going through your talk, you really mentioned a lot of heavy things that you have to deal with both last year and this year. How do you find balance in your life to keep yourself sane and hopefully happy? What do you do?
Well, Barbara, it's, as I look at all of you and I can see most of you, there's not one of you that I know of who has not been put in positions where you've had to make some very difficult decisions as well. That's, we all chose to be of service to our community in one way or another. And yeah, I'm going through a period of time right now where my colleagues and I are being faced, with some tough decisions. But I've got a loving family, thank God, and I've got a nice bottle of bourbon at home. It's family and friends mean a lot. Those that you can actually talk to without being afraid that they want something in return. It's friendship means everything in a time like this.
President Jeff, I have a question.
Yes, please, John.
In your talk last year, Mayor, you did mention some unusual and what sounded like more long-range uh, dreams, and that was to address some public health issues in
Yes,
Fort Wayne, like obesity and
yes.
infant mortality. Can you bring us up to date on those thoughts?
Yes, thank you for asking. That is still very near and dear to me. Unfortunately, as I talked to those organizations last year, a lot of what we had or wanted to do, we had to put on hold. But we are going to be rolling those out again. I actually have some staff members who are going to be meeting with the American Lung Association, American Diabetes Association, and others to make sure that we can get back on board. We're also looking for some additional grants, and I'll be announcing at my State of the City a new offering that's going to be downtown. I think I'll go ahead and sneak it away and let you know what it is. But the old Ward School that the Fort Wayne Community Schools was thinking about tearing it down. The neighborhood health clinic has taken that over. I think there was a short press release on that a few weeks ago, but I don't think they really grasp what's going to be happening there. The school inside is going to be completely rehabbed, and they're going to be offering up a number of different health opportunities within that organization. Everything from an expansion of the current offerings of neighborhood health clinic as far as medical and dental care, but they're going to be expanding it to mental health offerings. They're going to be getting into daycare operation. It's really going to be quite the comprehensive offering right smack in the middle of the 46806 area, which we all know has been an area of need. So I'm terribly excited about that. There's also going to be a number of grants that are going to be asked for to expand it even further. But if you're familiar with the school, it's a pretty good sized facility. So they've got all kinds of opportunities there, and they've got philanthropic groups and developers who want to work with them. So that's where we're going to be doing a lot of our work as far as trying to offer some additional educational components and like.
At this time, I'd like to open up the questions to the members of the media that are also on here with us today. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask the mayor?
Nothing from the media? Good.
I'm looking to see if there's anyone that's raising their hands. He has given some pretty meaty answers to the excellent questions that he's had so far. So hopefully we've gotten some good information for something to write up about the excellent job that our mayor is doing.
Well, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Dick?
Hey, Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor, I'm particularly interested in the southeast side and the Johnny May Farm and that whole area, the modifications that you made to the old Coke factory and the renovations of the neighborhoods and so forth. Can you see the possibility of what you've done at the Ward School being transferred into that southeast quadrant? Because again, it's an underserved area as far as health accessibility to healthcare and other social services. And you know, we've tried to do some things with the Johnny May Farm that have been very successful, but it's only one piece.
You're right, Dick. It's only one piece. There are a number of social needs actually throughout our city, but certainly in the southeast part of our city. The four areas that we talked about earlier: obesity, diabetes, smoking, infant mortality. Those incidents occur all over our city, but there appears to be a higher percentage in the southeast quadrant of our community. And that's one of the reasons we're going to try to work with the Ward School, or it's now the Neighborhood Health Clinic. They're the ones that are going to be the landlords. We want to work with them. We've also finished our discussion with with IU Health. They are going to be opening up a health clinic at Southgate. Now, I realize that's south and not so much southeast, but as we begin to grow these offerings, I think we'll be going more and more in that direction. We've also talked about working with Parkview and offering up some additional food offerings. There's been several healthcare systems, the latest one over in Toledo, Ohio, that has joint ventured with a grocery operation, trying to, again, help move these communities out of food deserts into something that's more accessible than just than just gasoline station food. But I think we're getting in that direction, Dick. It's just it's taken a while for a lot of us to wake up and find out how we could really address this from a strategic perspective. And again, I'll go back to the Southeast strategy that and a rather large task force has been working on for quite some time. That's going to be a part of that as well. But yeah, it's been a long time coming, but I think we're getting there.
I'd like to thank you, Mayor, for once again joining us as our speaker. We enjoy having you annually to give your run up to the State of the City address to our membership. So thank you, and we welcome you back every year.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you all. All of you, as I said earlier, you do a great job. So keep doing what you're doing.